You remember that iconic video? It is from Beijing's Tiananmen Square. The year was 1989, and the Chinese Communist Party was facing one of its biggest tests. There were unprecedented protests. Millions of people had gathered in Beijing to call for greater freedom of speech, less censorship, and democratic reforms. The country's youngest were standing up to the Chinese, to the most powerful in the country. Today, this man is remembered as the emblem of that very resistance that China quashed with force and armed personnel. This man decided to stand up to military tanks with nothing but 2 shopping bags. Decades later, there is fresh resistance in China, and there is a new tank man. We don't know his name yet, but we can tell you this. This man is from the city of Chongqing. He has given voice to the building frustration over China's zero COVID measures. He has called on the government of the leader, Xi Jinping, to admit its mistakes with regard to the handling of the COVID-19 crisis. One of his speeches is going viral on social media. In that, he is heard telling a group of locals, "Give me liberty or death." He goes on to say there is only one disease in the world, and this is being poor and not having freedom. We have both. We are still struggling and suffering over a little cold. For the first time since Tiananmen, words like freedom are being openly used in mainland China. Goes without saying, the man was taken away by the police. The onlookers protested. They were angry. On Chinese social media, this man is being hailed as Superman brother. Some are calling him Chongqing hero. The police censored these hashtags. Mentions of this man are being scrubbed off the internet. China's new tank man has become a symbol of the unprecedented dissent that is plaguing China. We have been showing you what's happening in Zhengzhou. The city is home to the world's biggest iPhone factory. There have been violent clashes in this iPhone city, as it's called. Factory workers are protesting against the COVID-19 restrictions. They have clashed with public officials, smashed windows, surveillance cameras, knocked down furniture, even sworn at the police. It all began with factory workers demanding bonus and better working conditions, and this has escalated to a mass uprising, an organic uprising. Earlier today, fresh rallies emerged. It looked like a build-up very similar to Tiananmen 1989. This display of dissent is not limited to this city. People across China are unhappy with the country's handling of the pandemic. And why should they not be? You see, the world is learning to live with this virus. But China is obsessing with its president's signature zero COVID policy. The Chinese border remains all but closed. The country continues to enforce localized lockdown measures, mandate mass testing, and impose travel restrictions. The visuals coming in from the World Cup in Qatar have been an eye-opener for many in China. They are contrasting the images of the maskless fans in Qatar to lockdown citizens of China. Look at the country's capital city, Beijing. It looks abandoned. Many of its residents have been asked to stay at home. Museums, parks, restaurants have been shut. The people are suffering.
It's not a question of whether we say it or not. It's a question of what kind of problem exists now. And we all understand that this has affected the lives of the citizens. Our lives are not just about buying groceries, going for a meal. We need to do other things. Think about what it used to be like during the prosperous past.
But is the Chinese government even listening? In one social media video, residents in the manufacturing hub of Guangzhou were seen dismantling the barricades there and throwing things at the police. The cops were heard shouting, "What are you doing?" Clearly, China is not familiar with protests, and what's happening is rare. What's happening is justified at the same time. People are frustrated. They are desperate. People are angry. They have realized that despite the draconian approach, China has failed to curb COVID-19. Even 3 years after the outbreak in Wuhan, China is still struggling to fight the virus. The country is reporting record high cases. On Thursday, nearly 33,000 fresh infections were reported, which is the highest for China since the outbreak in Wuhan in 2019. Clearly, the lockdowns are not working, and yet they are being enforced. For example, if you are living in Beijing, then you would need a negative RT-PCR test to enter public spaces. Schools across the city have moved online. This is what today's China looks like. And this is the result of Xi Jinping's making. It is his government that clung on to the zero COVID strategy. It is his government that picked lockdown over vaccination, that refused to import vaccines even when Chinese vaccines were clearly not doing a good job. It is Xi Jinping's government that prioritized mass lockdowns over mass vaccination. The people of China are now asking the government to admit its failure, accept responsibility, undo the wrong. The question again is, will Beijing listen? Or will it once again use force to quash dissent? WION now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.